In the previous episode, we saw a pretty strange paradox. You can choose your own hours, there's no boss standing behind you, no one is forcing you to log in, but the platform can still decide which jobs appear, how much you get paid, how incentives change, and how much information you actually get to see. So from that perspective, the gig economy can start to look like a system where workers are slowly losing control. But wait, that's still not the whole story. Because gig work is not the same experience for everyone. Imagine a student driving just a few hours on the weekend. They open the app, take a few trips, make some extra cash, then log off. For that person, the flexibility might be completely real. Or imagine an office worker who just wants a few $100 extra this month. A bad offer appears? Nah, not worth it. Decline, close the app, go home. They can walk away. But now imagine someone using that same platform to make rent, buy groceries, pay electricity, cover a car payment. A bad offer appears, and technically, they can reject it. But can they really afford to? That's a very different kind of choice. The first worker is deciding whether the offer is worth their time. The second worker may be deciding whether they can afford to say no. And that's where the meaning of the word freedom, because freedom isn't only the ability to choose when you log in. It also depends on whether you can afford to log off when the deal stops making sense. So the obvious answer seems pretty simple. Just require the platforms to pay more. And to be fair, some US cities and states have already tried versions of exactly that. Those rules can increase how much workers are paid for individual tasks. A delivery, a ride, a completed job. So problem solved? Not quite. Because according to an NBER study cited in the research packet, when task level pay goes up, the rest of the system doesn't just sit still. Platforms can respond. Workers can respond. The market can respond. Maybe fewer jobs become available. Maybe workers spend more time waiting. Maybe more people enter the platform and start competing for the same amount of work. So yes, the price of one task may rise, but your total monthly income, that may not rise by the same amount. In the case studied, monthly earnings did not increase in proportion to the higher task level pay. And that's important, because it tells us we're probably looking at the wrong thing if we focus on just one number. The problem isn't only how much does one trip pay, it's about how the entire system works. Who carries the risk? Who has the information? Who gets to make the decisions? And who has to live with the consequences? And now, the pieces start fitting together. Worker classification, operating costs, algorithms, data, incentives, dependence. They're not separate issues anymore, they're connected. Start with classification. When workers are treated as independent contractors, they do get something valuable. They can choose when to work. But in exchange, a lot of the operating cost moves on to them. The car, the gas, the maintenance, the insurance, the taxes, the risk. Then there's bargaining power. Because workers operate individually, one driver is usually negotiating alone. One account, one phone, one offer at a time. Meanwhile, the platform is sitting on something the worker doesn't have. Data. A lot of data. Customer demand. Where people are ordering, when they're ordering, how workers respond to different offers, how long they wait, what they accept, what they reject. The platform can see patterns across the whole system. The worker? They see what's on their screen right now. And then algorithms sit in the middle of all of this. They can influence which jobs appear, when they appear, who sees them. And in some systems, how incentives or pay offers change, which means the worker may technically be independent, but the information guiding their choices, that isn't evenly distributed. And then comes the feedback loop. Earnings aren't enough, so the worker stays online longer. More waiting, more trips, more hours, more dependence. And the more you depend on the platform, the harder it becomes to use the one piece of leverage you clearly have: logging off. Because think about it, if an offer is terrible, theoretically you can reject it. If the pay drops too low, you can walk away. Technically, you're free to leave. But if you need the next trip to pay rent, buy food, or cover tomorrow's gas, that freedom starts getting very expensive. And that's the paradox. The platform gives you the freedom to decide when you work, but the more you rely on it, the harder it may become to decide when to stop. And if your strongest bargaining tool is walking away, but you can no longer afford to walk away, then who really has the leverage? And this is the central paradox of the gig economy. A worker may not have a manager calling them at 7:30 in the morning, telling them, "Be here by 8." There may be no office, no supervisor standing behind them, no punch clock. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's no management. Because a worker can still operate inside a system that decides how labor is priced, which opportunities appear, when they appear, and how behavior is evaluated. The difference is, the rules are much harder to see. Management didn't necessarily disappear, part of it moved into software. And software has an advantage that a traditional boss never really had. It can observe millions of transactions, millions of rides, deliveries, clicks, acceptances, rejections, waiting times, behavior patterns. While each individual worker sees almost none of that. They see their account, their next offer, their own earnings, their own screen, while the platform sees the system. And that difference matters. So, how much does a gig worker actually make? The answer is a little frustrating. There isn't really one number, because earnings can change depending on the city, the platform, how many hours someone works, the cost of their vehicle, local regulation, demand, and dozens of other variables. But in the data analyzed by Human Rights Watch, after accounting for those adjustments, median effective earnings came to roughly $5.12 an hour. $5.12. But by now, that number may not even be the most interesting part of the story, because there's a bigger question. Who actually controls the work? And the answer is kind of both sides. Workers do control something important, their schedule. They can choose when to log in, when to work, and, at least in theory, when to stop. But the platform can control a very different set of things: pricing, information, distribution of opportunities, incentives, visibility, and the rules of the game. So the worker may control when they enter the market without necessarily controlling what happens once they're inside it. And for some people, that trade-off might be completely fine. Someone earning a little extra money, a few hours a week, might genuinely value the flexibility more than anything else. Log in, make some money, log off, done. No problem. But for someone who depends on that income to survive, the equation changes. Because now, you own the car, you pay for the gas, you cover the maintenance, you absorb the downtime, you pay the taxes, you carry the risk. But you don't own the marketplace. You don't own the system where your labor is priced. You don't control the demand. You don't control the algorithm. And you don't fully control the information being used to decide what your next hour might be worth. And that's when the word freedom starts to get a little complicated. Because technically, you are free. Free to log in, free to accept, free to reject, free to walk away. But if walking away means you might not make rent, how free is that choice, really? And that is the part of the gig economy worth understanding. The real debate isn't simply, can you choose your own hours? That's almost the easy question. The harder one is, who controls the things that determine what 1 hour of your work is actually worth? Because choosing when to work and controlling the value of your work are not the same thing.